Good morning,
Whoa,
all. Good morning, all. Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday.
Have you recovered from our delicious, disgusting snacks yesterday?
You know, you posted the replay of us doing that flight of scary candies yesterday, and I didn't realize how wild our facial expressions were when we were tasting some of that stuff. Caitlin, that got quite the response.
Are you traumatized?
With the green, your teeth are back to normal.
That was not, it wasn't cute, is what I would like to say. It was not a very cute moment for us.
I thought it was kind of adorable.
It was really funny. It was pretty funny.
Listen, did you brush your teeth after the show? Because if you didn't catch it yesterday, Caitlin bit into what I thought was the worst one. It looked like the worst one. It was a pickle candy, salty.
I can't even recount the taste of that one. It was just gross. There was no particular, it just smelled dusty. But I think, thinking back about it, the worst one to me taste-wise was probably the
first one.
Dark black licorice covered in a crusty salt layer.
And it just kept getting saltier and saltier.
Like, think about that for a second, folks at home. I know you can. Imagine that. Black licorice with crispy, crunchy salt on the outside. So you bite into it first, you just get an explosion of salt. And then after a few moments of enjoying the salt, you get hit with the black licorice flavor.
Actually, I think that speaks volumes about black licorice. Because there's so many people who can't stand black licorice. And then, remember Good and Plenty? Have you ever heard of Good and Plenty?
Yeah.
That's basically black licorice, right?
I hate it.
But if there is a team of folks dedicated to making the most frightening and unappetizing candy, and they put black licorice in there, that's...
And you ate the spiciest bean I've ever seen.
It was the spiciest Jelly Belly on the market. Part of the flight we did yesterday. By the way, you can order this from Candycopia in Oak Park.
Oh,
they've curated the whole flight. It's actually a pretty funny thing. And that was just, I don't know. I can't describe the bitterness involved there.
Kudos to them, though, you know. They really went all out with that platter.
Indeed, they did.
Appreciate.
Okay, we're recovered.
Yeah.
We have heard, we report a lot about something called food deserts, which are neighborhoods in the city, which they don't, like the residents there don't have access to fresh fruit and produce and that kind of thing. They've got like a corner store with junk food and booze, but yeah, it's a problem. I didn't know there was such a thing called a local news desert. I'm glad we don't live in one. You're watching a local news station right now. Right now. So, but apparently there are local news deserts in the U.S.
I'm not too surprised by that, you know. Sometimes these stations will cover a wide demographic, and I think local news probably doesn't happen for some people, Yeah,
so Medill, the folks at Medill, by the way, I'm an alumnus of the Medill School of Journalism, but they have released a Medill State of Local News Report in 2025. They just released this yesterday. I am very curious about their findings, but while the local news crisis deepened overall, Medill researchers found cause for optimism, and that is more than 300 local news startups have launched over the past 5 years, 80% of which were digital-only outlets. And you know, one of the best parts about Tuesday, it being Tuesday, is we always get visited, Caitlin, by our friends at Block Club Chicago. They are hyper local. And, you know, they have reporters that get into parts of the city. A lot of, like, news organizations don't have quite the resources or the, you know, the attention focused on neighborhoods themselves. But I think that's just such an important part of our show on Tuesdays is actually kind of reaching across to some news gathering partners, I guess we could call them, and they uncovered some fascinating stuff. Actually, one of the stories they brought today, I don't know if you were in yet, was this guy who lived on a yacht all summer long right outside Navy Pier. He just like anchored his yacht in Lake Michigan, would take this little dinghy into the mainland every once in a while to like stock up on groceries, and now he's going south for the winter to Kentucky.
Such a fun story. Such a fun story. No, to your point, I think that there is a need for local. I get messages all the time during the weather. Thank you for talking about our community. Thank you for shouting out my small town in our western counties or in Northwest Indiana, for example. People want to hear about what's happening in their backyard, and to have a reliable news source is means more than just those Facebook groups.
All local, exactly. So we want to bring in Zach Metzger. Zach, can you hear us okay?
Hey, Zach.
I can. How are you?
We are good. So Zach, are you currently at Medill? Like, are you a student there?
I am not a student. I am the director of the State of Local News Project here at Medill.
Got it. Okay.
Right up the street in Evanston.
Okay.
I went there. I'm a proud alum. And so this is the 4th year for this Medill State of Local News report. You guys just released your findings yesterday. Talk about kind of the methodology here and how you came up with your findings.
Sure. So we gather data from a lot of different sources. We combine data from newspapers, from digital news sites, from public broadcasters, and put that all together to try to map out where the places are where people have access to local news and where the places are where people don't have access. And what we've seen over the past 20 years, over the past 2 decades of local news, is that that gap is really widening between who has access to local news and who doesn't.
So we were reading here too that digital-only outlets are going up, and when we had this pre-show meeting, we're told that online newspapers or subscription services are going down. Do you have a reason for that? Do you think it's because digital might be cheaper or free?
Digital might be cheaper, digital might be free. I mean, the reason why a lot of digital sites are going up is there's a lot lower of a barrier to entry to start a digital site. It doesn't often cost much money. It doesn't take a lot of technical aptitude in 2025 to start a digital site. It's pretty easy for anyone to do. And so those are starting up in pretty significant quantities, although we also did see close to 60 newspapers, print newspapers starting up in the past 5 years, which is perhaps a brave thing to do, to start a print newspaper in 2025, but we're seeing some people do it and be successful at it. And subscriptions and viewership of digital news and the websites of newspapers and the websites all over the country are going down. And that could be for a number of reasons. I think one of the kind of things that we're seeing these days is the impacts of generative AI in search. Oftentimes that just kind of presents the headlines of a news site right in the search bar, so people aren't actually clicking through to the news source. They're just seeing things in Google and not actually going to the underlying source itself.
I wonder as well if, the traditional news consumer is getting older, and then we're ushering in a new generation of people who are, to your point, maybe just reading a headline or reading a headline. You know what I mean? It's like a scrolling type deal. Can you comment on that? Is there any truth there that like audiences are changing?
Audiences are definitely changing. We did a survey, Medill did a survey of Chicago news consumers just a few months ago, and we found the majority of people are getting their news, perhaps unsurprisingly, on their smartphones. People aren't really reading in print anymore, except for particularly older demographics. People are getting news from smartphones, and people are getting news from search, and people are also getting news from social media content, from TikTok, from Instagram. Now, some of these are channels that are created by news outlets, and then some of these are influencers that might be explaining the news of the day and carrying out those headlines. But all of this means that there's fewer people actually going to the individual sites themselves and seeing what the headlines are. They're seeing those headlines other places.
My question is, you brought up AI, so ChatGPT, do you know, are there laws in place or rules where ChatGPT can't get access to these websites that are a subscription service? Just get the information, and then if someone goes to ChatGPT, asks a question about this article, that it can just spout out the whole article that other people have to pay for, or is it not allowed to do that?
This is still being litigated, and this is sort of the cornerstone of the current New York Times lawsuit against OpenAI and ChatGPT. There's several other lawsuits playing out in courts around the country right now. It's still kind of unclear where those will wind up, but a lot of OpenAI and ChatGPT and all the other large language models, a lot of their training over the past few years has been coming from news sites and has been kind of going behind or around, shall we say, paywalls.
Yes, indeed. I want to talk more about what a news desert actually is. Are there actually, Zach, places around the country that aren't even in like a local news demo? For example, if you're in like, rural, Iroquois County or something like that, that you wouldn't get a local station? So that's kind of part one of the question. Or does a local news desert kind of imply, all right, your small town doesn't have a paper, it doesn't have a website, so like hyper local? I guess let's get our definitions and maybe where you're seeing most news deserts.
Yeah, so there's a kind of mix of places, and there are places that have limited access. They might not have a hyper local newspaper, but they could still get the local news from a TV station. They can still get some news from an adjacent county or an adjacent paper. And then there are places, really far-flung places, where there isn't really any source of local news whatsoever, or there might be only one remaining. These places tend to be rural. They tend to be poorer than the rest of the country. They tend to have lower economic development from the rest of the country. They tend to have technological barriers. There's lower rates of internet broadband in these places. There are communities in Alaska and in North Dakota and in Texas where there just isn't any source of local news remaining.
Wow.
So can you speak to, just in your research, maybe there's someone who is watching who is interested in the news, they're watching us do the news, maybe they would want to start up their own digital program for their local community. How are these people successful? What should they be doing? What steps are pushing these certain people ahead?
It can look a lot different in a lot of different markets, and what your audience wants might look a lot different depending on where you are, depending on who your audience is. We're seeing a lot of people start up news outlets pretty easily, whether they're publishing on Substack or creating their own blog, and then doing the work of actually producing the content, connecting with their audiences, connecting with their communities, and trying to do as much as they can to bring their audiences that hyper-local information that a lot of them are interested in.
How did you guys, so this is the 4th year that you've come up with this report, how did you guys actually do your research here? Was it mostly interviews? Was it surveys? And
we have a lot of really wonderful research partners that help us source some of this data. So for newspapers, for example, every state will have a press association, and they're the primary source that we go to a lot of the time for their membership lists of newspapers. But then we also want to do a lot of double checking and verification on those lists. Sometimes listed in those lists of newspapers will be things like the coupon shoppers that you get in your mail every week that aren't really providing any news, so we're not necessarily including those. And then there's also newspapers, smaller newspapers that are in print. They don't have any website, they're not a member of any news organization, and it requires a lot of digging to try to find those to make sure that we are including them.
Do you think that the overall, lack of a better term, vibe of local news, is it positive or is it negative? Are we worried about the future, or are we optimistic about new ways to get news out in the future?
I think it really depends, and it really gets back to this growing divide. In cities, in more affluent areas, there are a lot of really fantastic news startups that are doing really great work in Chicago, in New York, in DC, in Philadelphia, and all of these wonderful cities. There's people doing really great work of bringing new forms of journalism and connecting with audiences in different ways. And at the same time, in more rural parts of the country, we're really seeing a lot of news disappear, and it's much more difficult to be establishing some of these alternatives. So that divide is growing, and it really depends on where you are, determines kind of what the future of local news might look like for you.
Zach, this next question might be steering us off course, but I'm going to ask it anyway. At Medill, when I was there I was there in 03. So much of it was like journalism ethics and how to tell a story in a balanced fashion, and checking and double checking your sources and getting multiple sources from different places so that the coverage had credibility and balance to it. I'm wondering if this report says anything about the future of that. When you say that so many of those kind of journalism basics, journalism 101, And if this report says anything about the future of that model, because you mentioned how so many influencers are starting up, the barrier of entry is so low right now. But what you have is influencers interpreting the news for people, kind of repackaging it, and people are, especially the younger people, they're seeing it scrolling on social media. They're not actually clicking through to the full article. So what does this report say, if anything, about the future of that kind of traditional journalistic model that I ran through, that we kind of learned all about at Medill?
You know, I think that model is still really important. I think that at the end of the day, audiences still want, and they want it from about their local community. They still want the facts. They still want to be presented with information in a way that is clear to them, and that helps explain what's going on around them, whether that's a local election, whether that's a school board meeting, a town council meeting. Audiences kind of really crave an authoritative source of information about those things, so they can understand what's happening in their community. You know, I think the thing that going forward, a lot of journalism schools and journalism programs might need to be thinking about is, in those journalism 101 classes, also including information on how to run a small business, because a lot of news is, at the end of the day, a small business. And going forward, when we have a lot of smaller shops and solo entrepreneurs embarking on this journey, I think they need to also have those lessons about how to run a small business successfully as a news organization.
Yeah.
You know, with all this content creation, to Anthony's point, the scrolling and the getting the headlines and people having their own lens of how they view these stories and then spewing it out, and then everyone having their own algorithm and what they're seeing repetitively on their own social media platforms. If someone is watching and they're concerned that they're maybe only seeing one side of the story, what would you recommend to them to kind of weed out the false narratives out there?
That's a big problem, and especially it's a big problem when you get into the kind of social media world, which is designed to kind of feed you more of the same content that you're seeing. So if you're looking at this from a particular angle, you're going to keep seeing that particular angle. So it really, I think, in some ways, what's required is to kind of maybe break out of that social media sphere, if that's how you're consuming a lot of your news, and try to go to the sources themselves and see what they're saying. Because it might look a little bit different from how it's being filtered to you via the social media that you're seeing.
Yeah, that makes sense. About these 300 local news startups that have launched over the last 5 years, are there any trends about where they're starting up and what communities they are covering? Are they mostly in and around big cities, mid-sized cities? Are there rural ones?
There are some rural ones, but the majority of them are in big cities. A lot of them are in suburbs, and that's because a lot of the suburban papers, they've all become combined in some larger chains. And so there's a lot of startups right now that are saying, hey, our local paper is chain owned. It doesn't really have any reporters on staff. It's not doing a great job of covering our community. Let's start a news outlet that is focused on connecting with the audiences, connecting with the community, and trying to bring some more substantive news. We're seeing most of them be digital, but there are some print startups in there as well. And the majority of startups over the past 5 years have been nonprofit. I think the idea is that being a nonprofit can help insulate you a little bit better from the market. At the same time, nonprofit, as we say a lot here at Medill, is a tax status. It's not a business plan. You still need to figure out a way to make money. Yeah. But a lot of nonprofits or a lot of new startups are trying the nonprofit model to see if that can be a better path to sustainability.
My question is about these startups. Are they like 2 people? Are majority of them 5 people? Like, what are you seeing size-wise for these what they're called local news startups? So how many people are they normally starting with?
It really ranges. I would say the majority of them are fewer than 10 people.
Yeah.
And a lot of those people are doing multiple jobs. They're in the newsroom. They're also behind the scenes running the website. They're handling, connecting with audiences. They're handling outreach events. They're doing a lot of work in these small 10, 5, 2-person shops. There are some single-person operations that are on Substack, that are running blogs where it's just one person running around a town trying to collect as much local news as they can.
Oh, you got to admire that person. All right, Zach, that's fascinating stuff, sir. Zach Metzger with the Medill School. Thank you so much. for running us.
Thanks for
Oh, by
having
the
me.
way, before you go, where can folks check out the full report if they're really curious to dive in?
They can find it on our website at the Local News Initiative at Medill.
Local News Initiative at Medill. Zach
Right,
Metzger,
Zach.
thank you, sir.
Have a great day.
Thank you, folks.
Joining us from Caitlin, I wonder if, and I know we got to go, but like if students are the answer here, you know, all the local schools, anyone interested in storytelling, you know, deputize those students, get them out in the community, reporting stories.
To deliver
because they're learning the basics.
The digital platforms. Yes.
Yeah, I hope the younger set comes in and
Me too.
does its thing.
Passion is still strong.
Yeah, exactly. All right, we're going to take a quick break, couple minutes break here. But when we come back, we're going to be joined via Zoom by the author of a very, very fascinating piece of historical fiction. This has to do with the period in American history just after the Civil War. We're talking about the American and Indian Wars in the western part of the country.
Right, right.
Kind of west of the Mississippi River in those late 1800s. We're going to be joined by the author of a book called The Earth is Weeping when we come back.
So with the end of the Civil War, the nation continued its expansion onto traditional Indian tribal lands, which set off a wide range of conflicts that would last more than 3 decades. We are joined this morning by author Peter Cozzens. He wrote the book, The Earth is Weeping. It explores the wars and negotiations that destroyed tribal ways of life, even as they made possible the emergence of the modern United States. Thank you so much, Peter, for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
So let's start with The Earth is Weeping. What drew you to the stories of Native Americans in the West?
Well, as I'm sure you know, the era of the Indian Wars in the American West was one of the great epics in American history. And one of the things that drew me to it was the fact that no book had been written on this subject in almost 50 years. So the last book to appear before mine to cover the Indian Wars in the West in its entirety was D. Brown's Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, which was published in 1970. And that was very much a product of its time. It looked at the Indian Wars strictly from the Indian point of view and in the atmosphere of civil rights, heightened civil rights interests, heightened interest in American Indians and their plight. And so it didn't really tell the story from a balanced perspective. And again, it was 50 years ago.
So we're due. We're due for a piece of literature involving this period of time. So that we're oriented correctly as we launch into this conversation. What years are we talking about here? It's right after the Civil War?
Right. The the Indian Wars of the West didn't really begin in earnest until after the Civil War. There was fighting before the Civil War, nothing decisive. The Civil War interrupted, of course, the westward movement to some degree. And so the period of time we're talking about is the end of the Civil War, 1865, until the Wounded Knee Massacre in 1890,
Okay.
25-year period.
Okay, so Peter, let's talk about The Earth is Weeping, the title of your book. I briefly watched you online speak about your book, or a story that maybe is in your book, and you described a scenario where, and I believe you said it was Montana, where there were soldiers up elevated on a mountain looking down at the Indian tribe that they were supposed to, and they did in fact attack the next day. And the soldiers were listening to the moms, the babies crying, the fathers of these families within this Indian tribe, and how I forget which soldier we were talking about. It was his recounting of this scenario, and how he was saying, this is it's sad that we have to do this. Maybe they don't want to do this. Can you talk to the emotion in writing this book and reading these stories of events that happened in the past? Because even that just tugged at my heartstrings. I can't even imagine.
It was a roller coaster of emotions for me. It truly was. I did feel a great sadness throughout, for the most part, because the Native Americans, the American Indians in the West, there were a number of different conflicts that had been described as wars with the various tribes. In no instance did the Indians truly provoke any of these conflicts. So that made them all inherently tragic. And of course, the outcomes were tragic because in each case, the Indians lost all or part of their traditional lands. And I particularly felt sad when I finished the book. I felt a great emptiness, a great wish that I could have somehow rewritten it to change history in a more positive note. But there we are.
Yeah. Now, in terms of how to orient our mindset in approaching this book, is it a work of pure nonfiction, or is there a fictional story within the context of actual history?
It's pure nonfiction, and I think it's because it is, and because I try to incorporate on an equal basis the recollections not only of soldiers, whites, government, but also equally the recollections of American Indian participants. Because I allowed these people as often as possible to speak for themselves, or to tell a story as they may have seen it, I think in some ways, I hope at least, it's more compelling than fiction.
Peter, you talk about misconceptions or stories that were not true when you were doing this research. Can you touch on some of those?
Well, sure. There are a number of myths. I'll touch on, I think, the two that most surprised me. One, I think there's a general perception, perhaps fostered by cinema and fiction, that in some way, the American Indians in the West, again, there were numerous tribes, that somehow they united against white encroachment on their lands. That wasn't the case. And that's one of the reasons, I think, why the different tribes were so handily defeated in many cases, because they didn't unite. In fact, at the same time they were resisting, again, encroachment into their lands from whites from the East, they were also continuing to battle their traditional tribal enemies, other tribes that had been their enemies for decades in some cases. And also within each tribe, there was a peace or appeasement faction and a war or traditional way of life faction, and they often conflicted. So at the same time, part of the tribe was fighting the army, another part was either cooperating with the army or was neutral. And then on top of that, you had a number of tribes in the West that actively fought alongside the army because they saw the army as sort of their saviors against traditional tribes with whom they fought. So it was sort of the enemy of my enemy sort of thing.
Wow. So there was just so much division. It was like divide and conquer. So in terms of the main so-called villain in this book, would it be the army, the white settlers, or are there certain tribes that were at war with one another where kind of heroes and villains emerge in your story?
Well, the army, this is another myth that I hope I dispelled in the book and surprised me, is the army generally went into these conflicts reluctant. There was a great deal of empathy among the Army High Command, particularly the commanders on the ground out west, a great deal of empathy for the Indians and their plight. And in fact, a number of generals appealed to superiors, appealed to public opinion, somehow try to bring an end to these wars in a peaceable manner, somehow try to effect this change out west without recourse to war. So that surprised me. In terms of villains, most characters appear as gray in the book. There are few black and white characters. There are a couple characters that I would consider to have been villainous in one way or another. One of them is Geronimo, the famed Apache war leader, who actually was very much disliked by members of his own tribe, was feared because of supposed great medicine he possessed, but was greatly disliked, and in some cases made war on fellow Apaches. So that conflicts, of course, with the traditional appraisal of him as a courageous freedom fighter for the American Indians.
How brutal, how gory do you get into with the wars, to Anthony's point, between the two Indian tribes, or the multiple Indian tribes, and the settlers versus the Indians? How in depth are we getting into the, because I've learned a little myself, the history and how it was not only heartbreaking, but also kind of gory.
I don't spare the readers at all. Again, I try to relate things as they happen, and without pulling any punches. A lot of the gore occurred, a lot of what we would call atrocities. The Army did commit a couple of massacres, and that should not be overlooked in any sense of the word. And the Army did commit excesses. A lot of the so-called atrocities were committed by Indian tribes against white settlers. And that's because that's the way they knew how to fight. They believed that in trying to instill the greatest amount of horror possible in their enemies. And that translated in the mind of whites and white settlers into atrocities, when it was really the traditional way that Indians fought, again, to try to compensate for their lack of numbers by instilling the maximum amount of fear in their enemies.
One more question before we let you go, because we're almost out of time, Peter. There is so much going on today here in 2025, and I would say no more divisive of an issue in the current mainstream than the issue of immigration and the approach of this current administration with regard to how aggressive they are being with regard to enforcing the immigration laws that are on the books right now. If people read this book, this is a work of nonfiction, and having written this book, do you have any takeaways with regard to how this relates to what is currently going on in this country?
I think so. You have to realize that the tribes in the West, many of the tribes that we associate with the conflict, like the Cheyenne, the Sioux, the Arapaho, they were in a sense immigrants themselves. They had only been on the plains for fewer than 150 years when they were sucked into war with the Army. They had supplanted other tribes in the West to gain the lands that they called their own when the Army and the Indians came into conflict. So they were, in a sense, a wave of immigrants. And then the white settlers who came in 150 years later were a second wave of immigrants. And a large portion of the white settlers were of foreign birth, who were looking for a new and better home out west, regardless of the risk. So I think there are some parallels that you can take from the book with what's happening today.
Peter, thank you so much. It sounds absolutely fascinating. Congrats on this project. And I'm assuming we can pick this up wherever books are sold, Amazon, bookstores, the whole nine?
Exactly. As always, the old standby of Amazon. That's right.
That's right.
Do you voice over? Do you have a voiceover option?
Audiobook.
Yes, there's an audiobook as well.
Nice.
Okay, very nice. Okay, the book is called The Earth is Weeping. It is from author Peter Cozzens. Thank you so much for joining us here on Chicago Now. We really appreciate it, sir.
Thank you very much for having me.
All
Have
right.
a great day.
Yeah, we're going to go to a quick break. And then when we come back, we're switching gears. I love how certain chefs, they're getting famous not on TV for these competition shows. They're getting famous on TikTok.
They've got to be creative with their video editing skills and also their chef skills.
Exactly. They've got to be multi-talented.
Maybe.
I mean, hey, the guy from Medill was saying how you can't just be a good journalist now. You have to have a business plan too.
Right.
All right. So this guy is multifaceted. Davon Moseley will be joining us of TikTok fame when we come back. Tonight.
Making honey, garlic, lemon pepper, chicken thighs. Let's get into it.
Okay, wait.
I like the Barry White delivery. I can see why he's gone viral on TikTok. That voice.
Oh, man. Oh, yeah. How do you get this camera angle? My goodness, we are joined.
It's a macro lens right there.
Oh, is it? Like, is it a headpiece? We'll find out. Davon Moseley, better known as Royale Eats, is defining the meaning of home cook just in time for the release of his new book. Let's get into it. So, good morning, Davon. Are you with us this morning? Where are you coming from?
I am. It's a pleasure to be here, located in Maryland at the moment.
Maryland. And did we get it right? Is it Royale Eats or Royale Eats?
Royale Eats.
Royale.
Oh, Royale.
Royale with cheese. Are you a Pulp Fiction fan?
A little bit.
I just remember the Royale with cheese. Yeah, that's right.
All right, sir, how did this begin? And then you got to tell us how you got on TikTok and really took off.
Yeah, well, I've always had a love for food. I come from a family that, they find any excuse, to cook anything. If there's a positive thing going on, we're going to get together, and enjoy good food. And, as far as what I do with Royale Eats, that just came upon a time where, we had a lot lot of time on our hands in the country, you know. So, you know, during that time, you know, I was just making food and, you know, posting on social media, just showing what I made for the day. And I had a lot of friends and family that suggested that I start a food page. And, you know, it just took a life of its own. You know, I was just looking to make good food and, you know, show what I was doing. And, you know, people gravitated towards it. And I saw a place where I could serve people.
You have a really great voice as well, which I'm sure helps in your videos and all that. Okay, so you alluded to this starting kind of during the pandemic. You were just doing your thing. You shared it. What were the recipes early on that really connected with folks?
Well, yeah, you know, you just showed one, the honey garlic lemon pepper chicken thighs. You know, a lot of people really love that one. And it's funny because I remember making that one. I was tired. I had a long day, you know, from work, and I was just like, you know, I need to make something. That was a recipe, you know, I really worked hard on, and I was like, you know, whatever it does, it does. You know, I wasn't looking to go viral or anything like that. I just wanted to show what I made and how I made it, and people gravitated towards it. You know, I say I was probably one of the first ones, and, you know, there's a few more that, you know, we had like the Old Bay, you know, chicken wings and a few more. It's just like recipes just kept going. The more and more I did, the more and more people gravitated towards it.
Okay, so I'm sure you were like most of us at first, where you've got your, you know, handful of go-tos. But since this has exploded on TikTok and I'm sure other social media, obviously you're making a cookbook. Have you had to do some research yourself and learn how to cook things that you've never done before you went viral?
100%. You know, that was the only way that, you know, I can grow and I can learn more so that, you know, I can show people more. You know, I pushed myself to the limits and, you know, studying just, you know, the art of culinary and just how to connect with people as a whole, you know, so I had to relate a lot to, you know, what I learned growing up, but then also, you know, just learning more just not only in making recipes, but, you know, recipe development, you know, being conscious of the measurements I'm using, you know, thankfully, and I'm blessed enough to have a support system that's extended beyond the U.S., you know, into Europe. So, you know, having to use things in grams and ounces and, you know, getting used to that.
Yeah.
Stuff like that, you know.
You mentioned you're joining us from Maryland. I just found out during the segment moments ago that our director is from Maryland as well. Is that where you grew up by chance?
Yeah, I grew up in D.C. and Maryland.
And D.C. and Maryland. Okay, so is there any, in this new book that's just coming out, is there anything Maryland specific or Maryland influence in there? I know, what do you guys do, crab cakes pretty well out there?
Yeah, crab cakes is huge out here. You know, something that, you know, is very niche that, you know, I believe a lot of people, you know, from the DMV area be able to relate to. I have a mumbo sauce recipe. You know, that's a very special sauce that a lot of us know, you know, if you eat at Chinese carryout. So I think a lot of people from the area will enjoy that one.
Oh, okay. I love the regional cuisine, you know, like going regional.
And you gotta get it right every time.
Oh, yeah.
Davon, my question for you is, because I cannot make a piece of toast without burning it. If you could give me just some like subtle tips and advice, maybe a couple spices that I should use frequently with my meals, what would you say?
Well, yeah, you know, I say it's from an all-purpose seasoning standpoint. You know, being from the area that I'm from, I feel like you can't go wrong with Old Bay. You know, Old Bay goes good on everything if you ask me. But, you know, just having spices such as salt, black pepper, garlic powder, onion powder, and paprika, you know, can take you a long way. You know, having a good spice range. And, you know, I'll just say approach everything with love. You know, if you're in a good mind frame and you want to make the food, you know, to be good, and, you know, regardless of how it turns out, you know, you're just happy making it, I feel like that's half the battle right there.
I love this, and I love how you're kind of angling this for the novice chef. You, correct me if I'm wrong, chef, I'm just going to call you chef. Do you need any prior culinary experience to really dive into this book?
No. You know, I made this from the approach of someone that has never cooked a day in their life. You know, that was the goal, to where anybody can pick up this book, you know, regardless of your experience, and, you know, to be able to make good food. You know, I want people to be able to gain confidence and, you know, trust in themselves, and be okay with if you make something and it doesn't necessarily turn out how you wanted it to, you know, being able to go back into it, being like, okay, well, I picked this up and this went well. Well, I want to keep going and I want to keep learning, keep getting better. And the goal is for you to take these recipes and to put your own twist on it. So, you know, we have some foundational recipes so that you can gain that confidence. And then, you know, I want to see you build upon it and, you know, and turn the recipes into your own.
Davon, my favorite question to ask chefs is, are you eating PB&J for dinner, or are you cooking yourself a beautiful display every single day?
I'm a good PB&J kind of guy.
All right. PB&J and chips and make the pretty stuff for the TikTok.
Yeah, I've heard that. We get a variety of responses to that one.
Yeah.
That's great because you just keeping it real. Some nights when you don't have time, got to go back to the basics.
With milk.
Chef, before we let you go, Davon, where can folks pick up this book?
You can find this, wherever books are sold, commonly Amazon, of course, but Barnes & Nobles, Books A Million, all the book places you can find it. If you want to find a direct link, you can go to my website, RoyaleEats.com, where you can find a link to where, everywhere it's sold, and definitely hope that everyone picks up a copy and enjoy all the recipes.
Royale Eats, Davon Moseley.
Woo!
Good luck with the launch, and it's a pleasure to talk to you, sir.
Likewise, thank you.
All right, thanks so much. I'm headed out to that area, DMV.
That's right.
Later this week.
That's right.
Maybe we'll get some crab cakes when I'm there.
Or you could swing by and he could give you a little lesson.
Yeah, a little lesson.
Go viral, Anthony.
Those chicken thighs, they look good.
So good.
They look so good. And
yeah.
Maggie and I are not on the same page. She does not like the dark meat. She likes the, like the chicken breast. But like, look at that. I think that, sometimes chicken breast, when not done perfectly, can dry out.
Yes.
Oh, man, look at that.
That was crispy.
Look at that.
Were
And
those
actually,
thighs or breasts?
The way he edits it, too, I really like that. Because, well, first of all, it moves really quickly in the close-ups and everything, but it makes it look so doable.
Yeah.
And then you can see where you kind of rub it in under the skin there.
I want something
butter,
fast,
garlic.
And this looks fairly straightforward.
It does.
Yeah.
Oh,
and it looks like he fries it up.
Are we getting hungry? Is that what's going on here?
Is it lunchtime yet? Yeah, that
looks great. All right.
I bet it smells even better.
Oh my gosh, we're gonna go Halloween style when we come back, everybody.
We've
here
got a
in
puppy
studio.
here.
Listen, we're talking pet safety. I saw an adorable greyhound.
Poking around the corner right here.
The sweetest. Well, they're quick.
Oh, I see the little legs.
The sweetest pooches in the world.
We're going to learn how to keep your puppies safe and happy
this Halloween season. It can be a stressful time for pets. We'll be back with more right after this.
Let's what we call cat negative, meaning that he would be okay with cats.
He would be okay with cats.
But some are cat positive, meaning they can't be.
All right.
Can't be around. This is Travis. He's cat negative,
welcome.
which is a good thing.
That's right.
He can get along with cats.
He does.
So we
got Jim O'Boy.
Actually, let's start there. So Jim O'Boy, you are, you are the owner of Houndstown USA in Naperville. Can we talk about what Houndstown USA is first?
Yeah, sure. So Houndstown USA is a doggy daycare and boarding facility out on the west end of Naperville, Route 59 in Ogden. And we have spa services as well. So we can give your pup a bath, clip nails, clean ears, brush teeth. We're not groomers, we don't cut fur, but daycare and boarding is really our bread and butter.
So not just greyhounds, but all pets.
All pets, all breeds, no matter the size. We do a temperament test for you to come in. We evaluate your dog first. If you pass that temperament test, then, and you have all your vaccines as well, then you're allowed into what we call the back of the house with all of the other dogs as well.
Very good. Well, Travis here is getting a little airtime right now. We got a nice close-up of his handsome face. Oh, he's just so sweet. This can be a stressful time though for pets, right? Holidays. What are some of the basic things that we want to keep in mind with regard to pets during the Halloween season?
Sure. So for specifically around Halloween is the candy. So we really don't want to be feeding our dogs any of that candy. It's high fat, high sugar content. It will disrupt their digestive systems if they have sensitive stomachs. Plus they don't unwrap that candy either. You're going to have a lot of stuff coming out the back end if they get at it. And certainly no chocolate. Chocolate is a big no-no for dogs. It's very toxic to dogs. The darker you get with chocolate, the more toxic it is for the dogs. So let's keep all the candy for Halloween that you're giving out. Let's make sure the dogs aren't getting into that. And all the candy that's coming in. I can remember when I was a kid, I just dumped my pumpkin on the ground and just put all the candy that I wanted and left the rest of it. So we don't want the dogs getting into that candy that's coming into the house as well.
A couple years ago, my dog ate a whole bag of dark chocolate Hershey Kisses.
Yeah.
And he ended up being fine. This dog has a steel stomach, but I was nervous. What would you say to people who are going to be handing out candy? Maybe their door's going to be opening a lot, and you know the dogs get excited or they try to escape.
Right.
Where should they put their animals during the actual hours of trick-or-treating?
Yep. So this is a long lead collar for Travis. I have a short lead one so that when the doorbell does ring for Halloween, I can grab him by his leash and control him just at the door front. We don't want any what we call door busters of dogs running out because the door is opening. They're not going to stop. They're going to run over little kids, maybe us, what have you. So if you've got a collar that's short, I would keep it on him during that time. If Travis is nervous, so I might even put him upstairs in a bedroom, give him some extra blankets, extra toys, some extra dog treats, so that he's away from all of that noise and all of that door knocking and doorbell ringing and things like that. Maybe a thunder shirt or thunder blanket to put on top of them to make them feel safe and secure. Don't sleep on your doggy daycare. Reach out to them and see if your daycare has some availability on October 31st to take the pup in so that you as the human can enjoy Halloween just as much as your kids and the dog is safe and secure with their friends at their doggy daycare.
That's a good little day camp.
Yeah,
that
a little Halloween celebration with the pups.
Jim, are there any signs that dog owners should be aware of, maybe new dog owners as well? Maybe this is their first Halloween with a pooch. Should look out for that show that their pet might be getting overwhelmed?
Like right now, Travis, he's shaking a little bit, he's panting a little bit. This is all new to him, so whether it's Halloween or this set, dogs definitely have tells. So he is kind of looking around. He's looking this way now, he's that way. His tail was tucked. He's getting a little bit more comfortable here now. Dogs that are barking more than usual, dogs that are lunging more if you're outside with the pet, so always have your dog on a leash. Also have an ID on your dog just in case your dog does get away when you're out for Halloween, things like that. But those specific signs, the excessive panting, maybe the tail tucked, the excessive barking are high tell signs that your dog is in a little bit more stressful situation than they're used to.
Sweet baby. Let's talk about overheating. So are there similar signs if you have a costume on your dog and maybe they are too warm to be wearing that fuzzy thing?
Yeah, certainly the panting is number one. That's how they reduce their heat.
Yeah.
And on their bodies themselves, we can put costumes on them. What I would do is I would take my pictures and my videos within 30 minutes and then get all of that stuff off of the dog so that they're more comfortable, especially with all of the kids ringing the doorbells. That's going to make them stressful enough. We don't need to add the costume and the heat to that as well.
Are you seeing this problem over the years, or I don't know if it's a problem or if it's a good thing? You know, I know with like Amazon, the decorations that are available to folks, I mean, they get more elaborate and more complex every single year. Is that the case with pet costumes, dog costumes? What's the dynamic there?
Yeah, seems to be. You know, so I'm in my mid-50s. When I had a dog when I was in my, teens, we didn't have dog costumes.
Yeah.
Right. Now they have dogs that look like Chucky the doll.
The doll, yeah.
So again, I don't think there's anything wrong with the costumes. Just getting them out of that costume so that they don't overheat and add more stress to them, especially if that costume's kind of restrictive.
Yeah.
You know, dogs are safe and secure or they're not. And if you're restricting them and they don't feel like they're free to move, they may have more of an anxiety, and it may lead to more of them wanting to break away and run away, or the other thing would be to fight, right? So they're either safe and secure or they're not, and then if they're not, they either want to run away or they want to fight. So let's get them out of those restrictive costumes, after you take your pictures.
Yeah, get them comfy. Is there anything that you've seen in your research, fun things that people could do with their pets to enjoy Halloween? Maybe is pumpkin okay to give them, or?
Sure, yeah, pumpkin's awesome. Pumpkin is great for their coats. So all of that kind of stuff, if you're making something for dinner and it's obviously maybe a low fat, low sugar content, that's really what upsets their stomachs. Maybe they have something like that as well with you to be fun, but not the candy and not all that kind of stuff. Going back to the pumpkin, you can buy pumpkin at like Jewel. We put a scoop of it on top of his regular food, and that's why his coat looks kind of bright and shiny.
Yeah.
So that beta carotene in that pumpkin really.
What about the pumpkin
stands out.
guts? Like when you carve a pumpkin, is it okay for them to dig into that? Do you know?
Yeah, that would be okay for them. The seeds I probably wouldn't feed to them.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Maybe a little bit backed up then.
But yeah, so that might be hard for them to digest.
Yeah.
But that pumpkin itself, the outer shell, we don't eat the outer shell either.
Yeah.
But that innards would be good for them. That's all.
Okay.
When it comes to folks, you alluded to trick-or-treaters and just like people coming and going, the door opening and closing. Are there any steps that owners can take to prevent like a sudden or violent or negative reaction when the doorbell keeps ringing and so many strangers are just coming through?
Yeah. So the kids that are coming to the door are probably in your neighborhood. The dogs may have seen them 1,000 times, but now they're coming in costumes. They're covering up their kind of scent because the dog can visualize you and then smell you at the same time to identify you. So again, I would have a short lead on the dog so that I could grab the dog and just secure it, open the door, give the candy to the kids. If the dog is, like Travis would be fine with this. He would want to see the kids. He's not going to do anything. But if your dog is really someone that's going to try to get away from you, or if it's going to cause you a problem as a human, I would put your dog somewhere either downstairs or upstairs, kind of away from all of that activity so that they're not as stressed out.
I have a question about a sound machine. Would that be more stressful for the dogs? Like, could you put on a sound, like when you have babies, put on a fan, put on a sound machine to distract them from the ringing and all the noise outside?
Yeah, so I don't find that that's very helpful. The dogs don't really know what that sound is. It might even stress them out even more if they're not used to it.
Yeah.
So if the dog is a puppy and has been kind of in that environment, I think it would be fine. Travis has not been in that environment, so a sound machine for him probably wouldn't work.
Got it.
Even at Houndstown, Naperville, we have 60,000 cars that go through our intersections. There's a lot of noise. So I've had customers ask if we could put sound in there, and it wouldn't matter to the dogs. The dogs are probably more comfortable with the traffic sound than maybe music or something that they're just not used to or they don't understand.
Thank you so much for coming in and sharing your expertise. What are we, about 2 weeks
Week and a
out?
half away.
Week and a half.
I've got a big Halloween bash.
That's right. That's right. Well, happy Halloween to you.
Thank you, guys.
Travis, thank you for bringing him here into the city. Hey, where can folks check you out?
Yeah, so we're at the northeast corner of Route 59 in Ogden on the west side of Naperville. So we're Houndstown, Naperville. And my counterpart, Karen Pauley, is in Houndstown in Aurora, on the west side of Aurora.
Very good, Jim. Oh boy, thank you so much for being in studio.
Take your
we really appreciate it.
To his facility.
Dog lover Jake Hamilton is waiting in the wings. He can't wait to get in for a pet here on Travis.
Jake, were you taking notes?
He's such a handsome boy, isn't he, Jake?
Wait, me or the dog?
Both of you guys are just
Yes.
off the charts. Hey, we're back with another hour of Chicago Now right after this.
Fox Local.
Welcome to the 11 o'clock hour of Chicago Now. I'm Gabriella Primus.
I am Jake Hamilton, filling in for Tia, who is, I guess, under the weather. I wasn't here yesterday.
She's under the weather.
Under the weather yesterday.
And we're going to let her heal up so that she can be back better and better than ever.
I mean, listen, she's always blowing and going. So sometimes you got to listen to your body and just say, I'm just going to shut down for a couple days.
Exactly.
It happens.
Sometimes you get so much stress too. You're so busy.
Business, not to, be woe is me about this business, but this business can be a grind, and sometimes we look up and realize, oh, we haven't slept much lately, or we haven't, really kind of had any kind of downtime lately. You'll look up and a month and a half will pass and you haven't really had a day to do nothing. The older I get, the more I appreciate my nothing days.
That's so true. Yeah, where you can actually sit and watch Netflix.
Exactly. Like you were just asking what I did this weekend, and it's just like, it was a packed weekend, and then I got a packed next weekend, and then a packed weekend after that, and those rare weekends where I can just look at someone and go, I got nothing.
Well, you know what?
Nothing.
Not to brag, but I had one of those relaxing weekends.
Okay, but you also had a very busy week. You had a very busy week.
That's true, but I slept 10 hours on Saturday.
What?
From Friday night into Saturday. And then I took a 2-hour nap later on.
Good for you.
It's crazy.
Well, I know. The
disbelief
we're getting.
It was almost a problem. It's almost like a world record or something. But
wow. But it kind of just, sometimes you just need that reset. It's
100%.
We plug these in every single day, but we never plug ourselves in. You like that?
I like that.
That's as poetic as it's going to get. 11:02.
Write that down somewhere.
I used all my charm. 2 minutes into the show. Where were you at today? I never get to watch the show.
I was in Harvey all morning because they unfortunately had to furlough 69 city workers. So that's going to be impacting different departments in Harvey. There is going to be somewhat of a press conference protest going on here very soon. So we'll get more information, I bet, here at noon about what's going
probably on Chicago Live as well. At 1 o'clock.
Yep, I think actually Anita Blanton is going to be interviewing the mayor of Harvey.
Oh, excellent. And we had Mayor Brandon Johnson on Good Day Chicago earlier in studio.
We had a lot of great stuff.
We had a lot going on.
We're everywhere. We're trying to cover all the news for you folks.
All over the place.
And we also have a lot of stuff
to talk about. And we got a lot going on
this
show on Chicago Now. I'm very excited about this. Actor, comedian Pete Holmes, who is fantastic. He's one of my favorite stand-ups. Been around. I mean, honestly, I really came to know him from his show Crashing, and then I think a whole younger generation has kind of discovered him and appreciated his talents just because he's a very TikTokable comedian. His clips do well on social media.
I have seen a couple of viral.
Yeah, he's great. He's got a great face. Like when he tells a story, his face very much is a character in how he tells the story, and I'm excited to talk with him about that.
You know, surprisingly enough, I feel like I know him more as an actor now than I do as a comedian, and it wasn't until TikTok became popular that I've seen him more as a comedian, if that makes sense. I
mean, that'd be a good question. Is he a comedian who's a good actor, or is he an actor who can do stand-up?
But also, you know, so many comedians, it's hard to pull off your actual, you know, stand-up set because you're so popular on social media, people have such high standards, but he's just so good that when you go to his show, I feel like
that line kind of disappears. Well, he's going to be at the Riviera Theater
November 9th.
Well done. And so we're going to talk with him about that. And what else do we have going on?
Well, we're switching gears a little bit. We have to talk about kiddos and introducing them to peanut butter. Yeah, you have heard of them. There's, you know, a new study that's coming out from the Journal of Pediatrics that shows a measurable drop in childhood peanut allergies following the publication of new early introduction guidelines. This has been a big topic of conversation. Obviously, you know, we know maybe some kids, family members who have developed a peanut allergy. We have to be extra careful with them. So I do want to have Dr. Abby Lang from Lori Children's Allergy and Immunology join us live over Zoom. Thank you so much, Abby, for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
You know, maybe you can give a little bit of, you know, rundown of the study and also your reaction to the study, because it seems like things are changing for parents.
Yeah, for sure. I think, you know, this study got a lot of really good press for good reason. So basically what this study kind of showed is that, you know, our introduction guidelines, we used to say back in the day to not feed kids peanut early, but that's all changed. So this study basically looked at rates of peanut allergy from 2015 up until around 2019, because there were some introduction of guidelines that suggested starting peanut early and giving kids peanut early can actually prevent allergies. That was shown in a big study in England. And so this was actually like a real world study that investigators from the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia looked at a large database of kids who had been seen at their pediatrician and found that over the study time frame that the rates of peanut allergy had dropped a lot following the advice of pediatricians and allergists to start introducing peanut early. So I think that, you know, again, this is something as a allergist I tell people to do all the time, so it's really encouraging to see that the fruits of our efforts are starting to work.
Dr. Lang, you know, I feel like oftentimes when you bring up the topic of peanut allergies, particularly with members of an older generation maybe, the reaction you often get is, you know, when I was a kid, no one had a peanut allergy. This wasn't a thing we had to worry about. How did this become a thing all of a sudden? I'm sure that is a question, a statement that you get often. How do you respond to people who remember their childhood or their youth, quite frankly, as I do as well, I'm only 37, as a time period of their life where people didn't have peanut allergies?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question in allergy for sure. So, I mean, there's lots of different hypotheses and reasons why, you know, allergies are more common nowadays. Some of it is definitely due to increased rates of people who have eczema, because that's definitely a risk factor for developing a food allergy. And then also, you know, changes in our gut and our bacteria that's in the gut has been shown to be associated with potentially increased rates of you know, developing allergies, and then changes in our environment as well too, as well as a small genetic component. So it's really multifactorial, and really, I think this study helps because the only thing we know for sure is that introducing peanut early can really help prevent peanut allergy.
But you know, Dr. Lang, how early are we talking? Are we saying like toddler age, baby age? I mean, is like how old?
Yeah, so actually, you know, again, obviously you want to talk to your pediatrician and you want to make sure that your little one is developmentally ready to eat, but we actually recommend starting peanut as early as 4 to 6 months of age. Same thing for egg, and we think probably for other allergies as well too, but definitely for peanut and egg starting around 4 to 6 months. So one of those first foods that they're trying.
Yeah, very young.
Yeah, you know, there's that metaphor about, you know, like throwing your kids in the deep end of the pool, teach them how to swim, right? Like when you're talking about introducing them to peanuts, like what does that mean? You know, is it peanut butter sandwich, you know, is it, you know, granted, I don't have kids, right? So I don't know, honest to God, I don't know what a kid, I don't know what a kid can eat. I don't know what a kid can't eat. Like, I don't know how it works. I give, you know, is it like, what do you recommend giving them? Yeah, a little spoon,
I'm
little
guessing
thimble?
not a big thing of crunchy peanut butter because they don't have
Nutter butters
yet.
Yeah, so we typically recommend, you know, if you're going to do peanut butter, you want to make sure it's the smooth kind and thin it out with like water or breast milk. Just, again, you don't want to, you know, swap one issue for another with choking. There's also really great like peanut powders that you can buy, and you can mix in with purees and things like that. So that's another really great way to get that in a kid's diet as well too.
Do you suggest?
So that's kind of what we recommend.
Gotcha. Do you suggest still parents, you know, introducing peanut butter and eggs, like you said, in the parking lot of an emergency, you know, building? Because I remember a couple of parents that I know have actually physically gone to the emergency room, sat in the parking lot, gave their kids these foods just in case they had a reaction.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. No, I mean, definitely introducing this can be nerve-wracking, especially if you know a loved one or you have another kid who has an allergy. I personally try to, you know, reassure people that feeding your baby is supposed to be fun. So I really try to think about like introducing these foods in a gradual manner at home and trying to take some of that anxiety away from it. So, you know, the chances of having a full-blown, really big, severe reaction on the first ingestion are actually pretty small, although I know when it's your little one, that's all you can think about. But I think starting really low and slow at home, again, the first day, sometimes I tell my patients and families who are really nervous, just start with like, you know, an eighth of a teaspoon mixed in with, you know, some of their foods, and then slowly building up to hopefully gain your confidence and get back to the fun part of introducing new foods to your little one.
Are you finding though, you know, right now we're talking obviously a lot about kids and the allergy as children. Is it something that can happen as an adult? Like, can you, you know, if like hypothetically, like I said, I'm 37, could I wake up at 40 and all of a sudden start realizing that I'm having a different effect with peanut butter as opposed to what I used to have the rest of my life?
Yeah, it's for sure possible. It's definitely more common in younger kids to have that, but there are other kind of, you know, adult onset allergies. Actually, one of the proteins in peanut is really cross-reactive with tree pollen. So sometimes when people eat peanut butter, if they have a lot of seasonal allergies, they can have an itchy mouth and stuff like that. But if you're having symptoms as an adult, you know, we have, as allergists, we see both kids and adults. So we'll take care of you either way, even if you're 37.
You know, I know some people who have gotten tested for intolerances, food intolerances, and tree nuts will come up on their list, and then they kind of stick away from all peanuts, you know, peanut butter, or whatever it might be. What's the difference really between intolerances versus allergy to something like peanut butter?
Yeah. So an allergy, kind of when I think of an allergy, it's something that if you eat the food, you potentially will have immediate symptoms. So you think hives, maybe a cough, trouble breathing, vomiting, things like that. An intolerance is more of kind of like an annoyance. So the classic example is someone, you know, who has lactose intolerance and, you know, goes out for a big pasta dinner and has a lot of cheese and has some upset stomach and diarrhea. So food allergies are potentially life-threatening and very severe. Intolerances are more of the more you eat, you might have more symptoms, but typically not as severe. And, you know, fun fact, peanuts are actually more closely related to legumes or beans. So most people with a peanut allergy can eat tree nuts and vice versa.
Oh, gotcha. See, I know nothing medical.
Honestly, I'm writing all
honestly,
this.
that was the worst stated question ever, and you handled it very well.
Very well.
But, you know, I just was thinking, like, okay, do you have to stay away from it then if you do have a, you know, peanut intolerance or, you know, when it comes to tree nuts?
Sure, no, it makes sense. Well, to that point, Dr. Lang, you know, circling back to us saying how you know, people remember their childhood without a lot of people having these peanut allergies. Are you guys noticing, is there anything that's kind of on the rise, any sort of, you know, a new trend in allergies where, once again, it's a situation where when we were kids, nobody had this, but all of a sudden, you know, more and more people are going to start to develop it and it's going to become more common. Is there anything that's kind of moving in that direction?
Yeah, so I would say the top three kind of allergens in kids are peanut, eggs, and milk for sure. But sesame is probably the one that we see most commonly. That was actually
sesame, like sesame seeds, like on a burger bun.
Yep, like sesame seeds or like tahini and hummus. So that's actually the newest allergen that's actually required to be labeled on food products. So sesame is a big one that we're seeing a lot more of recently.
How often do you have to see it before something clicks where you're going, wait a second, like this isn't one person, two person, one kid, two kid. Like this is actually becoming a trend. How long does it take you guys to realize that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, sometimes when you're an allergist and you're trying to figure it out, if someone had a reaction, it's almost like a detective work trying to figure out all the things that they ate at the time. But, again, we're lucky here at Lurie Children's. We see a lot of patients and we have a big food allergy community. So if we see anything rare, we kind of reach out to other colleagues and see what else people have been noticing. The top kind of 9 allergens are the biggest ones, but, theoretically you can be allergic to any food, although it's much more rare. So
yeah, it must be really hard. It's like putting together a puzzle after eating so much throughout the day, different ingredients.
You just used a really interesting comparison. You compared it to detectives, and again, not just because I'm the entertainment guy here. I don't mean to compare everything to a movie or a TV show, but in something like a house scenario where every episode is, something's wrong with this patient, we can't figure out why. Like how much of your job is kind of reverse engineering? Like a kid comes in and they've got certain symptoms of X, Y, and Z, and you kind of have to work, is it working backward? Like how do you go backward from the symptoms to the cause?
Yeah, so I always, tell people kind of like your history and what happened is worth the most. So, we can do a bunch of different tests, but we really kind of want to know, the timing of what you ate, where it was made, if you were doing anything else at the time, because sometimes if, your kid's really active or it's really hot out or if they've been sick, that can also contribute to severity of reaction. So, sometimes it's really easy and it jumps out at you, but there's other times where we're having people bring in, wrappers and going on the product and looking at all the ingredients or bringing in the actual food that they think triggered it and actually testing with that food. So that's the fun and interesting part, but I would say it's a little less dramatic than house most of the time.
All right, back to peanut butter, because we were talking just before the show with someone behind the scenes, and they said that in Israel they have these snacks called bombas. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they're like little peanut butter snack, and a lot of the time it's younger kids that are enjoying them, and they just also happen to see a lower rate of peanut allergy there. Do you maybe see a correlation now that it's kind of proving this right?
Yeah, for sure. So that kind of big trial that I was talking about that occurred in England, it was called the LEAP trial, or Learning Early About Peanut. And actually, I love the story behind it. Dr. Gideon Lack, who was one of the lead authors on the paper, had actually given a talk in Israel about peanut allergy and noticed that a lot of people in Israel didn't have peanut allergies, but where they did in England. And so he kind of just basically was like, oh, well, they give bombas here as really early snacks, but we don't do that in England. So maybe we should try that. And that led to this whole big trial that kind of completely revolutionized what we do in allergy. So yeah, for sure. I think just kind of observing kind of differences in practices can really, lead to really great scientific questions that can help advance the field.
I love that. Dr. Lang, before we go, is there anything else you want people to know, and where can they find more information if we haven't hit their topic of interest so far in this interview?
Yeah, I mean, I want people to know that food allergies are real, but we can deal with them, and that just because your kid has a food allergy does not mean they can't do everything they want to do in life. And so part of my mission too is to try to take some of the fear out of this, because really at the end of the day, I just want you to feed your babies and really enjoy that period in time. And if they want more information, they can always reach out to us here at Lurie Children's. And then also the Food Allergy Research and Education Group, the FAIR website, is a really great resources for parents and families.
Great. Dr. Lang, thank you so much. And it's a great ending message, because it is kind of scary, right?
Sure.
When you think about these allergies. And you don't know until maybe it happens to you.
Yeah,
but I'm
there's
glad
so much
that
unknown,
Yeah, we have continuing reports that are coming out that are showing good news. So thank you again for joining us on the program.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We hope to have you back.
All right, coming up, we have one of my favorite comedians working today. Whether you know him from the stage, from film, from television, you know the guy, you love the guy. Pete Holmes joins us on the show. You don't want to miss it. Chicago Now rolls on. We'll be right back.
My name is Pete Holmes. It's okay. There was a mix-up. I'm not Ben Holmes, I'm Pete Holmes, and I mean, there was a whole thing. It turns out that John Mulaney, who we're all here to see, wanted Ben Holmes, but they got in touch with my manager and they got Pete Holmes, and then I got here and John was, he was not cool about it.
You know, you can't help but laugh whenever you see him. Even these even shorter clips on social media. He's hilarious.
Pete Holmes, one of the all-time great stand-up comedians. You know him whether it be on stage, on film, on television, but more importantly, he's going to be right here November 6th at the Riviera Theater. And we've got so many questions for him, and I'm so glad that he joins us live on Chicago Now because we don't have to keep it junket style and keep it 4 minutes. Pete, thank you for joining us, man. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Jake. Hi, Gabby. It's so nice to be here. It's so nice to see that clip. I haven't seen that in a long time. And it was so fun to write that for John Mulaney, another Chicago favorite, and show people his true colors. He's a monster.
Well, you know, one of my favorite clips, unfortunately, we couldn't show because we get fined for swearing, but it's all about how infinity makes no sense. And
yeah,
it is one of my all-time favorite, and you have an expression in that stand-up. It just, I think you say, it makes no effing sense, and my buddies and I, we use that expression a lot. But jumping off that clip, talking about sort of, you know, different comedians and stuff, when you're walking around the street, what is the balance of someone who knows exactly who you are, someone who can recall different bits from your stand-up versus someone who is 45% sure they know who you are?
Well, because of social media, you have more 45% of who you are because you're just in the storm. The faucet is on and entertainment is just flowing through your phone. So I get more because of TikTok, people just coming up and saying, I don't know how, but I think I know you. But it's funny that you mentioned that bit because sometimes, so I did this joke about how everything is atoms and that makes no sense. And we just kind of took that for granted. We're just like, oh, okay, I'll never question that again. I'm made of atoms. This table is made of atoms. And this is the most important part. When we ask science, why don't these atoms go through these atoms? The answer is, we don't know. And I feel like we should all be talking about this. We don't have to swear to talk about this.
Sure.
We can just say, that is a phenomenon. Yeah. It is insane that these atoms know they're atoms. They swarm together like a cluster of bees, and they walk around and go, hi, I'm Pete. We should be talking about nothing else. And it's insane. So sometimes, this happened recently, I was at a restaurant, and somebody, I think it was like a busser, he came up and he whispered in my ear, life makes no sense. Which is a weird,
it makes no sense.
It's a weird, yeah, it doesn't make any sense. And if I can just reignite that, because if you walk around in the world and just go like, this makes sense, that's not very interesting.
Sure.
If you go, I'm in a mystery, I'm floating in outer space, that's another part of that joke. You think you're in Chicago, zoom out. The whole thing, somebody just left it outside. It's floating in infinite nothingness. You don't like flying, you're always flying. When you're flying in an airplane, you're flying on top of something that's also flying at double flying.
My favorite is it's infinite space, and the infinite is getting bigger.
It's getting bigger.
It makes no sense.
They tell us stuff. I'm not putting down science at all. I'm just taking them at their word and saying they're saying that infinite expansive space is expanding. If it's infinite, how can it expand? I'm not saying it's not true. I'm just saying, what? That's what we should be saying.
This
about
is
a
great interview. Yeah, this is a great interview if you know that one specific bit that we're talking about.
You know what's so funny though, Pete?
Well, you can look it up. You can look it up.
Yeah, it's really good. Look it up. I promise you, it's great.
What's so funny though, you two, is that my brother, I'm pretty sure he used this joke on me a while ago, and sorry Pete, but it didn't click. Now it's clicking. But I remember him like going on, and he was like
Your brother
laughing.
should be a part of this
He was laughing with my cousin. I was like, what's so funny, guys? Now I know that obviously they know your skit.
You're right. It's not a joke. One of the things that I think is interesting about the joke is how worked up I'm being.
Sure.
So you can't just say that joke. I actually could talk about this for the rest of the interview. What makes something funny? What makes that bit funny, in my opinion, is that I'm getting angry about it. Like, I'm telling them facts, but I'm having this really over response, I guess you could say. And that's what makes it a joke. But if you read it as a transcript, I'm with you. There's nothing funny being said. In fact, that joke went viral. I don't really like saying that, but it did. It got picked up a lot. But when I used to do it in clubs, it didn't work.
Oh, really?
That's what's interesting. No.
Why do you think that is?
Because it's not a joke. It's like, I need to do it. It works if you know who I am and you know my perspective, it'll work better. But like a lot of times when I was just in some club, I'd be saying like, I'm made of atoms and this is made of atoms, and people were kind of like, why aren't you talking about, I don't know, sex or something more relatable?
That's so funny.
There's certain jokes that you save for special tapings. Like I had another joke about God, about either you think God created the world or nothing created the world. And I was kind of making the argument that it's sort of like saying the same thing. Both God and nothing are something you can't see, touch, taste, photograph, or prove. So we're sort of in the same boat. But that joke wasn't exactly bulletproof when I was in Cincinnati or whatever, like just going to Tampa.
Sure.
Like they didn't necessarily want to hear that. But then when you film the special, there's something about the internet that can find it's like a heat-seeking missile that will find the people that want to hear that. And that's sort of in defense of the algorithm. I sort of like that it'll find the people that are interested in a joke about that and give it to them.
Well, you know, you talk about finding, you know, what makes a joke funny. And whenever I think about my favorite stand-up comedians of all time, they all have kind of their own style that we can describe. You would describe Jerry Seinfeld differently than you would describe George Carlin, differently than you would describe Dave Chappelle. And I feel like you have your own style. I'm sort of curious, do you kind of decide at the beginning, this is the kind of comedian I'm going to be, or do you just sort of wake up and realize that style has evolved and now you're sticking with it?
I mean, I think it's a mix of both. When I was starting, I was putting Jerry Seinfeld and Jim Gaffigan and Bill Burr and Dane Cook in a blender and being like, I'm going to be like all of these guys. But then just by repetition, you can't help but eventually emerge as your own thing. But what I think is funny about that, I've actually been trying to work on a bit about that, Jake, is that every comedian behaves and talks like what their name sounds like. Like, Jerry Seinfeld, I'm Seinfeld. Like, that is perfect. He's so Jerry Seinfeld. And Bill Burr, Bill Burr, Bill Burr, I'm Bill Burr. Like, he's Bill Burr. That's the only name for that guy. He's not Billy, he's not William, he's Bill Burr, Bill Burr. It works for all of them. Hey, Chappelle. Like, those, they act, Mitch Hedberg. Like, they act like their name. Why? Except Nate Bargatze, who I know Nate. I don't think Nate looks like a Nate Bargatze. Nate Bargatze looks like he should be an Italian comedian doing, like, spaghetti material, but he looks... It works.
I feel like Nate sounds like Nate's eyes and his voice to me match up. I feel like the two, if that makes sense. He's got these big giant eyes.
Yeah, he does.
His eyes match up.
Yeah.
Nate and I started in Chicago.
Exactly right.
Both Nate Bargatze, me and Nate and Kumail Nanjiani, and I still love these guys. They're still friends. We started at the Lion's Den, which was a bar on Irving Park Road right by the Brown Line. And we used to go there, and it was like Hannibal Buress and all of these people that you may know now started this open mic in Chicago that was every Monday night. It was like a real to-do. And I can't believe how many of us are just kind of out there doing what we love to do. It was a magical place.
So, Pete, I have to ask you then, since you kind of cater your jokes when you're, recording versus maybe when you're not recording, do you cater your jokes too when you come to Chicago? Do you know exactly what people like here?
Well, that's interesting. There's something, and I mean this in the best possible way, no nonsense about Chicago. Sure. I don't know if it's the glass boxes you have to wait for the train in when there's 7 feet of snow, but there's something about like a get to it. When I perform in Chicago, there is a slight grace period, but then there's a real, like, we've seen it all, bring the goods. And that's what I bring to Chicago. I don't hesitate. I jump right in. And I just try to start hitting as hard as I can, because I'm not just saying this, it's a great comedy town, and something about the temperament and the weather mixed with that intelligence and that appreciation for the art form. When I go to Chicago, I go, you don't have to warm them up. I'm not going to say where you have to warm them up, but there are certain towns where you have to go
it's
like,
just us talking,
hello.
Pete. You could say it.
You're not going to tell.
Well, it's not even the same. You could go to a certain city and like maybe Thursday night, you just get the sense that they've never seen a stand-up comedy show in their life. They don't. What's interesting about stand-up is you're not doing it at them, you're doing it with them. Brian Regan, one of my favorites, said we're like musicians and we're playing the audience. Yeah. And I like to add to that, sometimes the instrument is out of tune or it's too drunk or it might not know what's going on. We're not doing it at you, we need you. So places that have good crowds that know how to float a joke and know how to appreciate, and also very important, know that you're kidding. I mean, that's super important.
To that point, you mentioned, working some of the smaller clubs here in Chicago. Oftentimes, by the time we see your special, you're so big, you're able to attract a crowd and everyone walks in already loving you. I love a good comedian being heckled at the beginning of their career story. Do you have a great story of bombing or a career or someone just shouting at you and just the worst things?
Too many. So I did this TV show called Crashing, which is about starting out as a stand-up. And one of the lines that the very funny Marina Franklin says to my character, she says, if it sucks when you're starting out, that's how you know you're doing it right. It sort of changes it. It goes like, this is a rite of passage. It's supposed to be hard. It's supposed to be difficult. That's where you're being forged in the kiln, sort of. Unfortunately, one of the worst heckles I ever got was just what? Like, it can't be topped. You say something like, you're like, oh, RoboCop. What kind of an abbreviation for robot is robo? Like, is that a real time saver? And somebody just goes, what? And like, what made it terrible was like, they weren't even trying to be mean. They were just going like, I don't understand. You had all this time to prepare, and this is what you're saying? I bombed because I was in Chicago. I would drive to like Peoria.
Oh, yeah.
And I opened for Bill Burr at this place. I don't think it's there anymore. It was called Brewster's. And there's this expression in comedy, people don't really use it anymore, but they go, will it play in Peoria? Because like people would just have a hard time
seriously,
in Peoria.
That's an actual expression?
It's more of the older school, but I'm old enough that I heard it a little bit. Will it play in Peoria? Meaning, like it's kind of like that Adams joke. I don't necessarily think at that club in Peoria, maybe not Peoria as a whole, maybe it's changed. I don't know if that would necessarily be broad reaching. That's kind of what that meant. So I remember opening for Bill Burr, before Bill Burr was Bill Burr, in Peoria, Illinois, and that's where that happened. I remember the guy's face. I had jokes about like being in Little League and you had to wear a cup, and when you're a kid they don't make athletic supporters in your size, and I was like, it's like getting a 3-car garage to protect your tricycle. And I pause, nothing is happening, and this big guy in the front just went, "What?" And I was like, "I'm sorry, I'm not what you're looking for."
How do you
and that was
recover
one of the
from
meanest.
what?
Do you know how much that would destroy me?
Oh, yeah, I would just walk off the stage.
You guys have to have so much confidence.
Yeah.
I don't know. I appreciate that. I remember talking to Bill about it. I was like, what do you do? And this was his real advice. He was like, just own it. If a joke bombs, be like, well, that sucked. Like he just said, own it. Like heckle yourself, kind of. So the next show, again, I'm in Peoria. I did the same joke. I'm like, oh, it's like I'm wearing, there's like a tortoise shell in my tight Little League pants. No, nobody laughs. And I go, well, that sucked. The problem was I didn't have a good joke to follow that joke. So now it just made it worse. Like you can say that joke sucked if you're Bill Burr, if you're like one of the funniest people that's ever lived. But if you're just a starting comedian and you go, that sucked, that's not helping. I would not give that advice. I would be like, my advice would be, own it and stand in the part of you that thought that was funny. You know what I mean? You know me. I would laugh at myself. If they're not laughing, I'd be like, I thought that was funny. There's a tortoise shell in my pants. I don't know what you guys are waiting for, but this is the show. Like, I would give it back to them.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh, my God. I again, to your point, like just the ability to be able to stay up on that stage. To be fair, I think the RoboCop joke is a great joke.
I actually, as I was saying, the first year of my stand-up, it was RoboCop. Robo is not a good abbreviation for robot. You're dropping one T. Like, is that a time saver?
Maybe because I love RoboCop, but I think that's a great joke.
Well, I get a sense of your age. If you're appreciating that, we might be close in age. I'm not sure. But a lot of places I would go, that's a very Seinfeld, like, what kind of an abbreviation for robot? It's Robo. And like, so many places, especially in like 2001, weren't looking for like what I was going for, which was more the Ray Romano, Ellen DeGeneres, Jerry Seinfeld kind of, and now Nate Bargatze thing. There was a thing at the beginning, and I'm so glad to see that comedy has evolved and changed for like different tastes. But like when you were starting, if you were in a bar and you're talking about RoboCop, people would be like, why aren't you talking about, you know, things I can't say?
Sure.
You know, I look at that video of you like doing stand-up in front of just thousands of people in that big auditorium. I'd be just so nervous. But do you feel like, you know, while you're doing your set that you're always getting a reaction in that kind of space? And is it more comforting being in that kind of space rather than a smaller venue?
Yeah, I think you're right on. It's like if you're performing for 1,000 people and you tell a joke that only 10% laugh at, that's still the sound of 100 people laughing. So there is something nice. And coming to Chicago and doing a theater, I filmed a special at a theater in Chicago. I think the Vic, is that a theater you guys have? Yeah, it was at the Vic. Sorry, I don't have a great memory. But there's a freedom in going like, even if it's some obscure reference, 100 people are gonna get it. And it does sort of embolden you. That's one of the reasons I'm excited for this show. And that clip is actually Town Hall in New York, which I'm performing at. I know we're talking about Chicago, but I'm going there for the first time on November 14th in New York. So that'll be that time where I'm pretending to bomb and pretending that John Mulaney is mad at me was the only time I was ever on that stage. And now I'm actually getting to go back, which is gonna be really cool.
You're not allowed to like them more than us.
Yeah, I don't even know why you mentioned
never.
them.
Yeah.
I can't believe I even said
That's like being on a date and then your date tells you about this other date that you're going to be going on in 2 weeks.
Oh, I like this graphic.
Hey, can I show you something? Here, this is something I haven't told anybody.
Please.
I just got these new earbuds, and I think I came up with the funniest. They let you inscribe it.
Yeah.
This is real. and I didn't think they would let me do it, but they did.
What is it?
How funny is that?
Pete.
How funny is that? Wouldn't you think that there would be some sort of algorithm that would stop you from doing this?
Now, did you tell a person, or did you type it in on a computer and then they just...
You just type, you're at checkout, you're buying the AirPods, you said you want to inscribe it, you're supposed to put your name or something. Yeah. I was like, it won't let me do it. Because I tried to put Adidas on a pair of Nikes once, and it wouldn't let me do it. But you can take it from me, the funniest thing you can put on a pair of AirPods
do realize
is Microsoft.
After this interview, your iPhone is just all of a sudden going to mysteriously start crapping out.
No, that entire headphone set's going to crash out.
Bro, what else is new? What else can they do?
Yeah, the new phone's out, so all of our phones are crapping out.
No, it just started happening. All sorts of things aren't syncing. It's a nightmare. They're going to force me into a new one. At least let me have one joke that makes me laugh every time I see it.
And then Cook's going to call you and say, how's that Microsoft joke working now? Pete Holmes.
Yeah, they do have access to all of my info. I shouldn't be poking the bear.
Everything.
They do.
Pete Holmes,
we'll
they're
see
giving
some
us the
leaks
wrap.
Tomorrow.
Dude, we could talk to you for the rest of the hour, but
such
you
a pleasure.
are amazing. Thank you for having fun with us, dude. You're a great guest. We're going to come out there November 6th, Riviera Theater, and all the best jokes are going to be used for us, and then New York.
And it would be really extra nice, Pete, if you could just send us some front row seat tickets.
Oh yeah,
and tell a RoboCop. You'll get at least one laugh from the because then
I'll go, Jake. This is for you, and I'll do RoboCop, and then Gabby at the end of I'll do Molecules, and I'll go. I don't know why that works either. I'll be just as confused as you are.
But
please come out. It's awesome to come back to Chicago. It's always the highlight of my year, so I hope you can make it. PeteHolmes.com is the link for tickets.
Excellent. We love you, buddy. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you,
You're
guys.
a good guy. And,
it was sincerely my pleasure.
All right, guys, we're going to come back. My mom was asking about this, the meteor shower. Yeah, my mom was asking. She looked up in the sky and was like, why can't I see the meteors? And I was like, I think it's because we're in downtown Chicago.
We're going to learn.
But we're going to talk with Adler. Adler, I got some questions for you when we come back. My mom has questions for you.
Chicago Now. Speaking of stars, we just chatted with one. He was awesome.
He was fantastic.
He's a new friend of mine. All right, we're talking about a meteor shower, though, that you can see until November 22nd. Maybe not here in the city with all the light pollution we have.
I know, much to my mom's frustration.
Maybe if you go further out, but we are having the expert join us. We have Hunter Miller, astronomy educator at the Adler Planetarium. Thank you so much.
Hunter, what's up, man?
Good to be back on the show. Not sure I've got quite as many jokes prepared as Pete had, but
not with that attitude,
lots
man.
of useful stargazing information.
Okay,
you know what?
no
Equally
problem.
important.
We'll keep the jokes for the end. First of all, how do you pronounce this meteor shower? Because I'm lost. And also, you know, just give us kind of an overview of what people can expect and where they can see it.
Yep, so this one is called the Orionids meteor shower. You'll hear different names for meteor showers. It basically tells you what part of the sky these shooting stars are going to originate from. Now, the first thing I want to talk about with folks is how can you go out and observe a meteor shower like this? Now, getting to a dark sky is definitely going to give you the best chance to see more shooting stars. But if you can't get outside of the city, one thing to keep an eye out for is bright lights pointed towards you. Make sure that you're blocking those out of the way. For example, putting a building between you and the street lights. That can make a big difference. Now, tonight will be the peak for the meteor shower, so you've got lots of chances to see some shooting stars. You will want to look into the eastern sky, and views will be best after midnight tonight. So this is something for those night owls out there for sure. And the big thing is that meteor shower observing is all about patience. So you'll want to sit outside, let your eyes adjust to the darkness. So no staying on your phone screen while you wait out there looking at those bright lights. Sit out there, lay back. You want as big of a view of the sky as possible. Give yourself the best chance of seeing some of these meteors.
You know, Hunter, I live downtown, and so I always assume when something like this is going to happen that I'm not going to be able to see it. But I think it was maybe a year and a half ago, was it, that the Aurora Borealis, like I was able to see it over Navy Pier?
On camera, right?
Yeah, and I was really surprised by that. So for those of us that maybe live in a very well-lit area at all times of the day and night, is it something that we're still going to be able to see, or do we need to get out of the city a little bit?
For sure. So bright lights, the light pollution will limit your ability to see some of the more dim meteors. So you might have a lower meteor rate per hour, depending on where you are. But even here in the city, some of these can be very bright and totally visible for you. If you're somewhere downtown or close to the lakeshore, you're looking to the eastern skies. So going out and looking towards the lake can certainly be helpful. One other thing we're benefited from is this meteor shower is lining up very nicely with the new moon. So just like we produce light pollution here on the ground, the moon produces light pollution up in the sky. So having that out of the way tonight gives you a pretty good chance of seeing some.
Okay, cool. Is this something like sometimes with the Aurora Borealis, you can catch it almost better on camera than you can with your naked eye? Is it the same with the meteor shower?
You know, the Aurora Borealis, those northern lights, are going to cover a big patch of the sky for an extended period, and they are dim, and so your camera can pick them up better, but it's important to note that they're up in the sky for a long time. With these meteors, they are incredibly quick. It's such a short amount of time that you can see these streaks across the sky that by the time you tell the person next to you to go and look at it, it's disappeared. So really, this is one where you don't really need any equipment. Sure, you can capture some pictures of them like you're showing here, but really the best tool is your eyes and just going out and relaxing under the beautiful night sky.
And before we let you go, is Adler doing anything, or can we come knocking on your door around midnight tonight and use some of the amazing tools that you guys have out there?
We don't have any special observing going on since, you know, our telescopes aren't very helpful for a meteor shower like this. You want to see as much of the sky as possible, and we don't have the darkest skies at the Adler. So I would encourage folks getting further outside of the city. But tomorrow night on Wednesday evenings, we do have the Doan Observatory open as long as the weather is clear, and that gives you a great chance to see maybe not meteor showers, but a lot of spectacular views of the night sky with me and some of our volunteers.
Love that. So before that, that's going to be the only time we're ever going to tell people to not go to the Adler. Beyond that, for every other circumstance, go to Adler.
Hunter, I have a really, really quick question for you, because I've seen it circulating on social media a little bit, but that there's a second moon that's that we can see that the Earth has until 2083. Is that a rumor? Is that just something that's like a catchy headline for people, or is that something that's true? I know it's not talking about the meteor shower.
It's somewhere in the middle. So there are some of these smaller asteroids and things that get captured and orbit around the Earth. And so that may be the case right now, but one important thing to note is that these are very small rocks, and even with large telescopes, you will not really be able to see them from here on Earth. So the headlines sound nice. Yes, there might be a second rock orbiting around the Earth, but not something that will be as eye-catching as the beautiful moon that we already have in the night sky.
Okay.
Hunter Miller Adler, astronomy educator at the Adler Planetarium.
You're awesome, Hunter.
Hunter, we love you, brother. We love Adler. Thank you for taking the time to do this, man. This is my mom was visiting for the weekend, was on my balcony last night looking for. I said, Mom, we're downtown. You're not going to see it. So I'll be able to go to her and call her tonight and say, listen, don't worry. Well, she's back in Texas. She'll be able to see it maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope she gets the chance to see him. If she misses these, the Geminids are coming up in December, and that's an even more spectacular meteor shower that she can certainly see some from Texas.
Okay, we'll have you back then.
Excellent, Hunter. We appreciate you, man.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right, we'll be back after this break.
Corporate.
Welcome back to Chicago Now. Okay, you see this nice little setup, colorful.
In the commercial break.
I know, yeah, and we're going to learn so much more. We have Alyssa Gross here, founder of Mahjong Society and author of Play Mahjong. Now, I think we usually correlate this with older people, right? Because it was popular in the 1920s, 30s, and maybe they learned from their parents. But it's becoming popular again, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, it's interesting the way it's really blown up, but it's also brought generations together because of that. There's a lot of people who remember their grandparents playing and are now getting a chance to play with them. So that's a big part of, I think, why it's so popular.
Why do you think it's coming back? Because obviously it was sort of booming in the 1920s, 1930s. Why is it sort of having that upswing again?
Yeah, so 1920s and 30s is when it really was created in America. So this is American Mahjong that we're talking about. There are actually over 40 different versions.
Oh, wow.
It originated in China, but very quickly spread to other countries, and those other countries created their own versions. So American Mahjong, and Mahjong in general, I think, is having a big moment right now because people are spending so much time on their phones in front of screens. They're looking for analog ways to get together. And this not only is that, but it also is a fun, mentally challenging game. And I think the really pretty and fun accessories don't hurt either. People love collecting Mahjong sets.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm looking at these pictures and all of them are beautiful. And I was looking it up on TikTok right before we came on. And I was like, wait a second, look at these boards. They're so pretty. This looks so confusing to me, though, and I even watched a bit of a tutorial. I'm also one of those people that just turns off their brain when like someone's trying to explain a board game to them. But for people at home, what's like an easy how to play this?
Sure. So Mahjong is a game of luck and skill. It's played with tiles, and the goal of the game is to be the first person at the player to create a complete winning hand, which is 14 tiles long. Now, of course, the game is more complicated than that. We teach Mahjong lessons throughout Chicago, and of course, you don't hire an instructor to teach you Monopoly, but we do teach it and help people really get a hang on not only the rules but the strategies that they can go off on their own.
Okay, how popular is your book right now? Are people really grabbing for it?
So the book actually comes out next week.
Awesome. Hey, congratulations.
Well, it's been really exciting to see the preliminary sales, though, and it's been selling really well, which I was informed by my publisher recently. So Mahjong is having a moment, and it looks like we've hit the right time to publish the book.
I love that. You, during the commercial break, lovingly shut me down whenever I said, yeah, you know, I think I used to play this as a kid, and you said, if you play it on a computer, it's not the same thing. So you mentioned there being different variations of it. So there was obviously it was on like old Microsoft computers?
Yes, the classic Microsoft 95. It was that and Minesweeper.
Yes.
Yes, so if you were to search in the App Store for Mahjong, you are more than likely going to find a matching game, which uses Mahjong tiles, but is really more like a memory game.
Sure.
Honestly, the game of Mahjong can be fairly complicated, and so putting it down into an app form on a screen can probably take away a lot from the game. So I guess maybe that's the technology developers' answer to that. But the 40 different versions are mostly based on the countries in which they originated. So there's Japanese Mahjong, Singaporean Mahjong, there is Hong Kong Mahjong, Chinese Mahjong is the original, and American Mahjong from the 1920s and 30s.
So knowing that, you know, this hasn't been as popular lately, how did you get into it? And, you know, being so enthralled that you'd want to write a book and share it with the world?
Yeah, so I learned in Dallas when I was living there, and it's actually just very popular in the South. It kind of, I think this resurgence of popularity among younger generations kind of started there. There's always that, I think, sense of community in the South that tends to pull together things like this. When I moved to Chicago in 2023, though, I couldn't find anyone to play with that didn't live in a retirement home.
That's so cute.
And so I started a business teaching people how to play because I found a lot of people interested in learning, but they didn't know how to play. And to date, me and I've hired other instructors. We've taught nearly 3,000 people around Chicago how to play, and it's really taken off.
I want to talk about the vibes of when the group gets together to play, because whenever I think of something like dominoes, you know, I'm thinking, you know, it's cool, it's chill, and people are enjoying it. Whenever my family gets together and we play Uno or maybe even Monopoly, we are not family by the end, you know, of that. So what is the vibe when you get a group of people around to play? All right, is anyone throwing the pieces at each other?
I'm sure in some circles. It is really funny. It's an interesting game because some people have said that it's one of the only games that spans the realm from a casual, low-stakes game all the way to big-stakes money gambling. Whoa. So it can really run the gamut. And so it does depend on the vibe of the group. I will say when we do more family lessons around the holidays, there is a greater sense of competition among those siblings, I think, and the parents too. But a lot of people look for this to be a casual game night among friends, an answer to staying in instead of going out. You know, there's a big movement right now of people not drinking, and so this is something that people can do without drinking. I will go so far as to say you probably shouldn't drink when you learn this. It's complicated enough. So I think it really depends. It lets you and your friends decide how competitive you want to make it.
Okay, so you want to get started.
Yes.
And you don't have any of the, you know, the board, the pieces. Can you just get it on Amazon? Is there a certain place where you need to get it?
So there's a broad range. If you want to just get started and see whether or not you like it, I would first recommend checking out a class because those will all be provided there. You can figure out how to get started. But if you want to buy your own set, you can buy a full set on Amazon for under $100. And then if you really want to invest or even broaden your sets, there are a lot of companies that are starting to create American Mahjong tiles and other styles that are available on their own. They're just little companies starting up on their own.
20 seconds, where can people find more information on what you do in your book?
So the Maj Society, M-A-H-J, on Instagram is where you can find anything about our upcoming events. The book is also available to buy there, but it's in every major book retailer.
Alyssa, I mean, this is so cool.
Join?
I think we do. Yes. Jake might get a little rowdy. It might take a while for me to learn.
money down.
Again, it's hard.
We've taught everyone.
We gotta go. We'll be
okay.
right back.
Thank you so much. We'll see you tomorrow.
That's right. Live from Chicago, this is Fox 32 News at noon.
Next at noon, banning ICE on public properties. The two counties joining the list in limiting federal immigration activity.
The first hearing to discuss the mayor's proposed budget is now underway. We're going to hear from the mayor on his vision next.
And taking a live look outside, what a gorgeous day. A little cloud cover, but still pretty nice one. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Sylvia Perez.
And I'm Natalie Baumke, and we're starting with this. As the Department of Homeland Security continues to defend its tactics in court, Lake and Will counties now banning ICE from using its properties.
Now, officials are saying that this move is keeping county-owned spaces, such as parking lots and garages, off limits for staging and processing. In Lake County, new signs are going up at 28 places after the county board approved this measure last week. North Chicago and Carpentersville is expected to follow suit, joining Cook County, Evanston, and Broadview in limiting federal immigration access to local properties. And the search is on for a missing Mother McCauley High School student. Chicago police say 18-year-old Estefania Herrera was last seen wearing a black and white checkered fleece top and blue jeans last Friday. Herrera is 5'4", weighs 200 pounds, and has brown hair and brown eyes. Anyone with information is asked to contact Area 1 Special Victims Unit detectives. Alderperson Jessie Fuentes is now filing a federal lawsuit.
This comes after she was handcuffed by federal agents. We do have video of the incident. It happened earlier this month. Federal agents went to the Humboldt Health Hospital to detain a patient. They grabbed and handcuffed Fuentes after she repeatedly asked if they had a warrant to be there. The video spread very fast online. It fueled anger over ICE's tactics in Chicago. Federal agents say Fuentes was blocking them from doing their job. Fuentes says the agents went too far and that she's standing up for her community.
So this budget is responsible, it protects working people, and it challenges those with means, the ultra-rich, these large, big corporations, to put a little more skin in the game to make sure that we can keep communities safe.
Mayor Brandon Johnson touting his 2026 budget proposal ahead of the first city council budget hearing.
This includes reinstating a tax on companies with more than 100 employees. Paris Schutz will have more on the budget proposal later in the show.
All right, let's give you a live look outside. As Sylvia said, we've got some clouds dotting the sky out there, but we got some sunshine today.
And feeling like fall, isn't it? And this is just the beginning, right, Caitlin?
That's right. It's very gusty outside. I think that's our main headline. Right now, we do have dry skies in the city, but a little bit of rain still in portions of northwest Indiana. Some sprinkle activity, but we're not done with the wet weather. In fact, as we work our way through the afternoon, this evening, tonight, we have the chance for scattered showers out there. Low pressure is moving on by, and that's bringing us the rain, the clouds, and the wind. Behind me, I wanted to show you a closer look at our radar. Where most spots are dry, you might see some drizzle that's not even showing up on our radar, so some mistiness out there, especially in northwest Indiana. As we take a look to our western counties, McHenry, you're seeing a little bit of light rain, some spotty showers in portions of Kane County as well. The blue shade there that you see just west of Chicagoland, that's a wind advisory because of gusty winds. Even here locally, though, we're seeing these numbers approach 40 miles per hour. 36 currently at Midway for those gusts, 32 in Gary, 26 in Valpo, and 30 in Morris. Temperatures today reaching into the 50s, but it is going to be a windy one. We'll time out that next round of rain that's starting in our western counties ahead.
Thank you so much. A group of community activists now calling for Harvey Mayor Christopher Clark to step down, citing years of alleged financial mismanagement and lack of transparency.
And this comes as Harvey employees face ongoing furloughs and the city struggles to meet payroll. Gabby Primus has more on the growing pressure at City Hall.
69 furloughs to be exact, and of course this is going to impact a lot of employees coming from multiple departments in the city of Harvey. Now the choice is due to what officials describe as a severe financial emergency. As the city has announced, employees will be placed on temporary furlough while 98 essential workers will continue reporting. It's a long list of affected departments, some of which include public works, police, fire, water, finance and revenue, administrative staff, and the list goes on.
Harvey Mayor Christopher Clark has said the city needs around $51 million a year to fund its operating expenses, but only takes in about $30 million. Clark said that when he took office in 2019, he inherited $164 million in debt. That is a 35% loss of state revenue to fund pensions, and he says a, quote, gross lack of financial and personal records, end quote. Still, during a special city council meeting last week, residents were outspoken about the city's choice, but the mayor expressed the seriousness of the situation.
We are going to follow all the rules that we are supposed to follow, because we definitely don't want them filing any more unfair labor practices, because that's just going to cost us more money anyway. So we don't want them to do that. We're going to try to take care of as many people as we possibly can in this administration. But it would be irresponsible of us to think that we can continue to operate the city the way that we do.
Now, because of the cut in staff, the city will be in close talks with the Cook County Sheriff's Department to arrange potential law enforcement support if needed. The same will be done with local fire departments as well. Gabriela Primus, Fox 32, Chicago.
Well, local advocates are now pushing for more child care funding. Several organizations, including the Illinois Child Care for All Coalition, held a rally outside City Hall today. They praised Mayor Johnson allocating $7 million for children in his budget proposal, but they say they need more.
Child care is essential. Without child care, families cannot work. Children cannot learn, and our communities cannot thrive.
The advocates are also calling on the mayor to increase the amount of money he wants large corporations in the city to pay as part of the community safety surcharge. Well, today, Senate Republicans are expected to meet with President Trump to discuss the federal government shutdown. A live look at the nation's capital, where Senate Democrats rejected Republicans' short-term spending bill for the 11th time. Senate Majority Leader John Thune says his conversation with the president today will focus on the Democrats' demand for more subsidies for the Affordable Care Act, the main issue in this shutdown.
In the meantime, federal workers from the Environmental Protection Agency are still reeling from the new furlough notices that are now in effect. The news was sent out to workers in Region 5, the American Federation of Government Employees, Local 704, responded to the news. They say in part it is a blow to the agency and its mission to protect public health.
And as that shutdown drags on, President Trump has begun work on a new $200 million ballroom at the White House. Photos show